Yo, welcome back to Gem Mint Collectibles. It's your boy Gem Mint. I'm coming back at you with another recent reads video. Just got done reading X-Men Legacy Legion Omnibus, which is not that big of a book. It's 24 issues of X-Men Legacy from 2012. I'm going to talk about the book itself and the story, what I thought about it. I'm going to get into spoilers here, so if you haven't read Legion and you don't want to know what happens, you might as well just stop the video right here, come back after you read it, and then we could talk. But I just got done reading it, and I definitely enjoyed the book. Kind of a freaky story, not your typical X-Men book. Legion is David Haller, who's the son of Professor X. He's called Legion because he's kind of insane. He's got all these different characters in his head who each have their own mutant power. So his mutant power is basically all of theirs, but he has to kind of fight them in his mind and take the powers from them so that he can use them in the real world. Now, in his mind, all these different entities, or whatever you want to call them, are always trying to overcome him. Because if somebody's able to take him over, they take over his actual body, and then they run amok in the world, cause all kind of trouble. And that's kind of why he's been sedated and held captive this whole time. So, kind of crazy. Technically, he's insane. He doesn't really act insane, though, just in the sense that he has all these different personalities in his head. We're going to end up looking at the art on a close-up, and I'll flip through the book so we can kind of talk about the story. But that's just the main gist of the character. He created this prison in his mind. It's called the quadruple cortex or some shit like that. We'll see it in the book. But to keep all these things in check. Now, he's got like regular little mutant-powered characters, and then he's got like these Omega-powered monster-type characters that he can't even take control of yet. So he's got these kind of Arkham Asylum scarecrow gloves with these like syringe fingers, and they can detach, and he plugs into these creatures. Let's say this creature has the power to teleport. This guy's got the power of telekinesis. Your power is now mine. He basically overcomes this character, and now he has that power in real life, and he can combine multiple powers as well. The thing about Legion, he's got like a daddy complex, right? Because he's the son of Professor X, who we all know his dream is that humans and mutants live together in harmony. Again, right, spoilers. So in the early stages of this book, Professor X dies. This is around the time of Avengers vs. X-Men with the Phoenix Force, and Cyclops kills him. And then Cyclops eventually becomes with the red X on his face. So the death of Professor X kind of fucks with him, but then he has an epiphany that Professor X, his dream is flawed, right? And that the X-Men and Professor X were a very reactive team. So he wants to be proactive and go after these threats. We've heard this kind of shit before, right? But he wants to be more proactive, and he wants to save the world. So there's a couple of supporting cast characters in here. X-Men are in here a little bit. There's an X-Man called Blindfold, and she's a pretty big part of David's life. Extremely powerful mutant, born without eyes. She wears a blindfold. She's super powerful, but we learned that she's only about half of her power. Her brother, who was abusive and racist and part of a religious cult against mutants, he dies, and his hate keeps his spirit alive, and he ends up stealing half of her powers, and Luca is his name, and he ends up being, is he the main villain of the book? Yeah, he's the main villain. But there's some other villains in it. Anyway, so here's the cover for the Legion Omnibus. Basically just rambled on for like 5 minutes. There goes the spine. Here's the back. The hardcovers are the same. We'll go ahead and prop this up on the bamboo cookbook holder, and we'll look at the art, and it'll jog my memory as well. So I guess let's go ahead and do that.
All right, so let's crack this thing open. Take a look at some of the artwork. The artwork is okay. I think you're mainly in here for the story, for the writing, which is good. We start off in the Cortex Complex. That's the prison that he created that I was talking about, where he tries to keep all his personalities in check, or all his powers in check, or whatever you want to call them. When we first meet him, he actually has this kind of suit on. And he's got it pretty down pat as the warden, the executioner, keeping everyone in check, the CO, whatever you want to call him. But he ends up getting overrun early on in this, and he doesn't wear that big suit anymore. He just keeps the hands with, as you can see there, there's syringes and the tubes or whatever. So there goes your man, David Haller, Legion. He does not like being called Legion. He doesn't like the fact that that's kind of like saying he's crazy. Like, you have all these things in your head. You're a legion of people. And his big mantra throughout this arc is I rule me. It's kind of like how he hypes himself up to take over these powers and everything. So here's our first look at the main enemy. It's these eyeballs who can take the form of, other matter to create a body. But we find out who he is later on. Here's our first look at Blindfold. She's an extremely powerful mutant. What are her powers exactly? I couldn't even tell you. So let's just flip through some of this story. Very trippy artwork on the covers. So this is just a beginning arc where David, his thing is he tries to do the right thing. He tries to save these two kids, but to the X-Men, it ends up looking like he came there to harm them. The X-Men, have to always kind of clean up his mess, and he tries to do the right thing, and it ends up backfiring on him. You're seeing a lot of X-Men as I'm flipping through, but it's not really an X-Men heavy story. You're mostly going back and forth between David's brain and what's going on in real life. So this is showing Blindfold, and Legion is reading her mind. Her brother resented her because she was born as a mutant with no eyes. She's a rare mutant that was born a mutant, didn't manifest at puberty, right? This is showing her father leaving within the first week. So Luca, her brother, resents her. He beats her. He ends up going to jail. He ends up accidentally killing their mother, and it's just kind of one of those things. So let's see, what are we looking at here? Yeah, I gotta start taking notes. This is David inside of his mind, getting all juiced up. You see his gloves that I was talking about, and taking over his powers, getting control of his powers. This is the religious fanatics that Luca was a part of. So you get a lot of trippy stuff in the what do I want to call it? Not the mind sphere. Whatever, I'll try to think about it. So then he's got like this one kind of creature in his mind that's kind of fucking with him and takes the form of Professor X and makes him think that he's his father. There's a lot of funny stuff in this book. The writing is good. I laughed out loud a few times. Like, this was one little one where she goes in her astral form to come spy on him, and then she's like, "Oh my God, you're sleeping in the nude," and she like covers her eyes. Well, first of all, she can't see, but it's funny, man. So he's sleeping naked. So they had a lot of funny writing in here. As you can see, the art is pretty good. You got Chamber there. I guess David is British, and Chamber must be as well. So let's see what else we got here. Here goes Cyclops, post Avengers vs. X-Men. So Legion, he has the potential to be super powerful. That's his thing, but it's just hard for him to control all his powers. They're constantly trying to take over him. This guy, I don't even remember his thing. This guy, we meet him. He's some extremely 8-shit type of alien that's supposed to be protecting the Earth, but he's in solitude too long, and he's reading books, and anything he reads, he takes as face value. So he'll come to Earth and get the National Enquirer, and all of a sudden that's fact, you know. So he gets a little crazy. David ends up saving him later on. Here he goes fighting Luca in all different forms as Xavier. Okay, so I already got towards the end. So Blindfold, when we finally defeat Luca, she gets her powers back and she becomes Destiny. Now, what we learn in this book is that Legion is destined to become this big mixture. All the mutants he'll bring into himself and become this big worm world eater type of thing. And they get visions and prophecies that he becomes this world eater, and she is destined to destroy him. Throughout the story, they fall in love, and he's cool with that. He's like, listen, I know one of us is going to have to die. You're going to have to be the one to end it. And they kind of make you think that that's not going to happen. You know, he has a plan to help defeat Luca by tricking him into thinking he's become the world worm in order to defeat Luca. But in order to defeat him, he has to get control of all his mutant powers in his head and become the how do you say gestalt, and he does. Where's the good scene of that? He does end up controlling all his powers, but in sucking in all his powers, he does really begin to suck in all the other mutants and become, you know, the prophecy there. So this is what he ends up looking like, right? He starts looking all like a coral reef or whatever, you know what I mean? This is 23. So he starts growing into this big world worm, sucking in all the mutants' astral forms, kind of like how he does with his own powers in his mind. Here he is talking to Blindfold, who's really Destiny on the outside. So you have this big brontosaurus type of power with a big clock face. It's the Chronodon, which controls time. It's one of the monsters that he was never powerful enough to control. He's finally able to control it and to stop time, and this is basically his destiny that starts here and it ends at the bottom, right? And it has all these different paths, but basically always leads to the same thing. And he learns about this earlier on, that he'll always become that world worm, and no matter what he does, it'll never change it. So what he ends up doing is destroying his own destiny. This is how it ends. And he basically erases himself from existence. So what happens, we end up going back to the beginning of the book, where Professor X first dies and Blindfold first hears about it, but Legion is still with her in her mind, and he's always going to be with her, but Professor X never had his son. So it's kind of one of those stories where you woke up and it was all a dream. You know, it never really happened. And the artist ends up talking about it. It was a good read at the end right here. You know, saying that, you know, even if something never happened and it's still important, and at the end it's kind of like, these comics are not real and it never happened, but, you know, it's still important. So it was a cool read. You get all the covers and variant covers at the end. It reminded me almost like a Sandman, Neil Gaiman type of story, in the sense of its scope, you know. But I didn't really talk about the writers much. I'm not really familiar with the names of the writers. Who is it here? Spurrier. I don't even know his first name. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the artwork. All right, y'all. Well, that's the X-Men Legacy Legion Omnibus recent read. I hope you enjoyed it. If you read the story, let me know what you thought in the comments. Did I leave anything out? Probably did.
If you haven't read it and you watch this whole video, I guess shit, you weren't planning on reading it anyway. Does it make you want to go out and read it? You let me know. Anyway, make sure to hit that like button on your way out. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. I do a lot of recent reads videos. I just recently read, what was the last book? I know I recently did the Silver Surfer Omnibus. I recently read Star Wars Darth Vader, the Ghost Rider Omnibus. So I've been knocking these out, man. In addition, I do the statue reviews and other kind of haul videos, omnibus collection videos where I do every, Spider-Man omnibus release so far and, stuff like that. Also, we got the live show coming out every Sunday. This Sunday, me and Manimal are going to do Blackest Night. I'm actually going to read the Brightest Day omnibus next to try to prepare for the show a little bit. But this Sunday, we're going live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We're going to do episode 5 of Gem Mint Collectibles Live. So be sure to check that out. We need y'all support in the live chat and all that good stuff. So I guess that's everything. Lastly, make sure to go ahead and like Gem Mint Collectibles on Facebook so you can get updates on the live show and other exclusive content. And yeah, man. So I'll check y'all out later. Stay minty. Peace.